Thanks again for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I was reading about your background, and I understand that you started in business, not in politics. So if you can tell us about that, about those years, I believe that you established a technology company, a technology firm, sold it. You're still somewhat involved in the business world. Tell us about that part of your background.
Well, you know, it's true and it's not true. That's officially, formally it's true. I started my career in business at the relatively young age of 26. After serving for almost 8 years in the army, before it was fashionable in Israel, every second Israeli did it, I opened my information technology firm. I am talking about the early 80s, when a computer was not a household commodity as these days. Thank God it was a successful one, a successful firm, a successful company. We dealt with a myriad of issues related to information technology, mainly tailor-made software for big corporations, facility management, system analysis, etc. When I sold my interest in the company, I hold more than 50% of the stock of the company. It was one of the largest in Israel, with more than 500 professionals working in the company, which for Israel, especially for Israel of those days, was a very large company. But I said it's only partially true because, you know, Aaron, I think that even when my daily job was to read balance sheets and profit reports, I think that my heart, and in some cases also my mind, was in political issues. And I was sometimes more interested in the headline in the newspaper than in the bottom line of the balance. Actually, even during the years I was first CEO and then chairman of the board of my companies, I went for almost 2 years to what in Israel we call miluim, to the reserve, to volunteer as Secretary General of a political party in Israel, a now defunct political party, led by one of Israel's heroes, Professor Yuval Ne'eman, the late Professor Yuval Ne'eman, that was both maybe one of the greatest scientists Israel ever had, and also a colonel in the military, a great personality that led the party, but now it doesn't exist anymore, as most Israeli parties. So yes, I started in business. I would say that even my business life gave me later the opportunity to be a free person in politics, not to be dependent on anyone. And also my formal education has nothing to do with the things that nothing to do with international relations or political science. My undergraduate was in economics and computer science, and then I graduated a master's degree from Tel Aviv University in finance. Because when I sold my business, for the first, I didn't know what exactly I'm going to do with my life. And so for the first time in my life, for 2 years, I was a full-time student. I went back to Tel Aviv University to complete a second master's degree in finance. And I say this because, you know, I had a terrible dilemma. Since I didn't know what I am going to do with my life after selling my business, I had this dilemma if to go to college to study Jewish history for the soul, or finance for a future new business. So I decided ultimately that I will not be so daunting. I went to finance, which in some degree, although I loved the years that I was a finance student, in some degree I was wrong. I mean, maybe it would have been better to learn Jewish history for the soul.
What about now? Talk about, we have a president who comes from a business background. He wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. How can Donald Trump bring sort of his business background to bring about some new thinking on the so-called Israeli-Palestinian conflict? I understand that ultimately any new thinking really should and needs to come from Israel and from the Palestinian Authority, but how can this outsider, this non-politician, who is not afraid to look at these holy cows, as we call them, here in politics in America and just punch right through them and say, you know, there's absolutely no logic to this. How can he take that, his special brand of politics and his being an outsider, and bring it to some fresh thinking on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, you know, Aaron, I think that the first step, he did it during the first press conference with Prime Minister Netanyahu in the White House, when he said, look, I am not locked by any axiom that was believed those most dogmas in the international community for so many years. For me, everything that is agreed by the parties will be agreed also by me. And that was a very important statement, because I think one of the reasons we see no advancement in the so-called peace process between Israel and Palestinians is a kind of, rigid way of thinking. We need out-of-the-box ideas in order to make advancements. I think that the old paradigms have failed, and we have to understand why they have failed. And in that sense, the statement by the President was extremely important. If you ask me, Aaron, I think that the most urgent thing is to identify what caused the previous attempts to fail. And for me, it's very clear what caused the previous attempts to fail. What impedes a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians is the adamant refusal of the Palestinians to recognize Israel's right to exist. And I want to explain what I mean, because the most important word in my last sentence is right. There are Palestinians, by the way, not many, but there are Palestinians that accept Israel's existence as a fact. They say, look, what can I do? Israel is strong, has the 7th mightiest military in the world. We have to come to terms with the fact that Israel exists. That is good for an armistice, for a ceasefire. That is not good for a peace deal. Because if that's your way of thinking, that means that the moment you will be able to correct the injustice that was done by Israel's creation, you will use that opportunity. That's what happened in Gaza. They use every single penny, every single yen, every single pound, every single euro that was contributed to them in order to amass armaments against Israel, not for hospitals, etc., because they think that Israel has no right to exist. So the main impediment for peace is the fact that the Palestinians, all the Palestinians, virtually all the Palestinians, for sure the two large factions, Fatah and Hamas, do not recognize Israel's right to exist. And, you know, Aaron, I often say that, and I deeply believe that the most important person in the peace process is not the President of the United States, nor the Prime Minister of Israel, and not even the President of the Palestinian Authority. The most important person in the peace process actually is the Minister of Education of the Palestinian Authority. And I don't mean only in the sense of incitement to kill Jews and glorification of terrorists, even in a more basic level, in the fact that they educate their children that Israel is a colonialist entity that has no right to exist. And you do not compromise with someone that you believe is stealing your life, your land. That's the basic problem. Now, I will tell you more than that. Not only that we are not in our way, or at least maybe President Trump will change that, but we were not in the way to solving that problem. This problem is aggravating. And I will give you two examples, two proofs from the last year or so, month, even last month, why I say that aggravates. The first one is UNESCO. The fact that it was so important for the Palestinians that UNESCO adopts a resolution that says that Jews are not linked to Jerusalem means that they want to educate themselves and the world that Israel has no right to exist, no link to the land of Israel. And the second one, even more telling. I was present when it happened. I was present when the new Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres from Portugal, said the following, and listen carefully. He said only this, quote, "The temple that the Romans destroyed in Jerusalem in the year 70 was a Jewish temple," unquote, period. He didn't say because of that Israel has a right. He didn't say anything, just the historical fact. Less than 24 hours later, he had a letter from the Palestinian representative with a strong protest, saying that, demanding him from retract, and saying that that's an insult to the Palestinians. That means that not only that the Palestinians are not getting closer to a state of mind that allows for peace to be achieved, but the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, you correctly point to, first, the Palestinian history of denying every single state that Israel ever offered, whether in 2000 and 2001, 2007 at Annapolis, 2009. They refused to even come to the bargaining table when Benjamin Netanyahu took unprecedented steps, so-called gestures for peace. You're also pointing to the incitement while Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority chairman, stood at the White House several weeks ago and claimed that he's educating the Palestinian people in peace. These are all part and parcels of the Palestinian Authority assault on many fronts against the Jewish state. Another one of them, which is also being adapted by radicals around the world, is the BDS campaign, the Boycott, Sanctions, Divestment campaign, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions campaign, targeting Israel. So talk about, we're here at the Orthodox Jewish Chamber of Commerce's JBiz Expo. How can Jewish businesses sort of create an alliance or do something to oppose this BDS madness that has gripped some aspects of the world?
Well, you know, first of all, you said correctly that, you know, the only steady pattern in the diplomatic sense of the Israeli, in the diplomatic aspect of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is that Israel accepted every peace deal and the Palestinians rejected, and you said it started in 1936 with the Peel Commission. We are not in an history lesson, but nevertheless it's worth reminding that. And you said in 2008 when Ehud Olmert presented. I also used to say that until last week. Because that last week, Haaretz, you know, not Fox News, Haaretz revealed a document from the peace negotiations led by Secretary of State Kerry in 2014. And we learned from those documents that the same happened also in 2014. Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to a far-reaching compromise, and Mahmoud Abbas rejected it, both in his meeting with Secretary Kerry and then in his meeting with President Obama. And I would like to add, before I answer directly your question, also, you mentioned the question of incitement. I think that the most evil, the worst representation of that incitement that the Palestinian Authority carries out against Israelis and Jews is the well-known fact that they pay salaries to terrorists, and in case the terrorists were killed, to their families, which there is no greatest incentive or glorification or rewarding of terrorism than that. And I saw that the Secretary of State Tillerson said that they decided to cease doing that. And when asked how does he know, he said that that's what he was told by the Palestinians during the presidential visit in Bethlehem. Well, I think Secretary Tillerson is an outstanding Secretary of State, but he apparently has yet to learn that what the Palestinians tell him in a private meeting in Bethlehem will be always most probably a lie. And I assume that he already understands that. They already announced that they are not going to cease paying the terrorists. Now a word about BDS. BDS actually is a big failure. Let's not forget that. You know, I saw a survey of the market value of the companies targeted by BDS, and all of them, for sure the average, maybe there was one that for common business reason didn't, but in the average they made twice the market performance. So BDS is really, the economic BDS is a total failure. And you see, you know, it's enough to see, sufficient to see the shape of Israel's economy these days. You know, Aaron, I remember one day I woke up when I was younger, I think 20 years younger, something like that, and we were amazed by the news that an American company, in that case AOL, acquired an Israeli company, Mirabilis, or the brand name was ICQ, the first instance messaging software, by $400 million. And we said, it can't be true that an American corporation pays $400 million for an Israeli company. Well, you know that Intel paid for Mobileye a few months ago $15 billion. Yeah. And no less interesting is the fact that the CEO of Intel came to Israel and said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Mr. Prime Minister, we in Intel see ourselves as an Israeli company, no less than an American company. That's very significant that the CEO of Intel, when Israel is threatened by boycotts, comes to Israel and says publicly, we are an Israeli company. Implicitly, what he said is, if you don't like us, boycott us, which, by the way, would take the boycotters more or less to the Stone Age without Intel. So Israel economy is doing extremely well. The shekel, which I remember having a 400% annual rate of inflation, today is the strongest currency in the world. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what a miracle is. As Ben-Gurion used to say in Israel, if you do not believe in miracles, you are not a realist. And the cultural BDS is also a total failure. We had, you know, I can't keep track of the rock and pop and hip-hop and bands that come to Israel, from Lady Gaga to Madonna. And yesterday, I think, was one of the oldies, Rod Stewart, performing in Tel Aviv. So there is, you know, this nudnik Roger Waters from Pink Floyd. We can survive without him. You know, I once said jokingly that the other last month, Justin Bieber performed in Israel for the second time. I said it wouldn't be so bad if Roger Waters would have convinced him not to come, but I'm not a great fan of him, as you can understand, but I was joking, obviously. So the BDS in America especially is is a psychological one. It's about delegitimization and not about causing any economic or cultural or other harm. And even in that sense, is constrained mainly to the colleges and universities of this country. There we have a real war.
Yeah, that's the real problem.
There we have a real war. And we have to be much more aggressive, much more assertive. I had now, the last month, I have a small victory there when I was in City College of New York, invited by SSI, Students Supporting Israel, and was heckled and interrupted by Palestinian thugs and pro-Palestinian thugs. And after a few wrong moves that made by the president, by the leaders of the college, which belongs to CUNY at the beginning, they understood actually what happened, and they are going to take action against those so-called Students for Justice in Palestine.
Do you think there's more that can be done on American college campuses? You're pointing accurately to the BDS campaign being an abject failure economically. I mean, we see, I think just today and for the last week and a half, the Wonder Woman movie is one of the most highly grossing films that was recently released. It has an Israeli actress, in spite of all of the boycott propaganda. But it's psychological. They're loud, and they're very loud on college campuses. You've been affected. Other Israeli politicians have. Even pro-Israel speakers in general have. I can't give out the specifics, but I personally am going to get involved in this fight on American college campuses in the next few months. Is there more that can be done by the state of Israel against this extremist movement targeting pro-Israel speakers on college campuses?
Well, you know, Aaron, in some senses, I think that we are in the same boat, as we say sometimes in Israel, we're not with other movements that are their freedom of speech is obstructed in many campuses. It happens in the West Coast, it happens in the East Coast. I think as a foreign representative, I had to be very careful, but I think it's a problem that the American society has to deal not only in respect with Israel. We saw what happened yesterday in Virginia, the horrendous assassination attempt of, and let's all of us pray for a speedy and healthy recovery, refuah shlema for Steve Scalise. But I think in some senses it's the same phenomenon that we see in campuses by extreme elements that are also anti-Israeli, but not only anti-Israeli. In some cases, they are even anti-American. And we as Israel I agree, have to be relentlessly, not giving up. I can tell you that when I was in CUNY, in CCNY, the City College of New York, and my security asked me to leave the room, I refused. And I think we should not give any ground to our enemies. And we, on the contrary, I will make a point of coming again to the same place next year and the next semester, and we must persevere. But I said it's not only an Israeli problem what is happening in many campuses around America, across America. I think it's first and foremost an American problem.
Now, lastly, to close on economics and business, is there anything more that Israel can do or that Jewish businesses can do with, let's say, the Palestinian economy? Now, I understand the history here. I mean, you just look at, remember in 2005 when Israel evacuated Gush Katif, the Jewish communities of Gaza, there were very well-intended American businessmen who bought greenhouses, the high-tech greenhouses, I think for $13 million or something, with the intention of jump-starting the economy in Gaza. And within hours of Israel pulling out, Palestinians came and dismantled the greenhouses, and actually some, according to reports, the pipes were used by Hamas and Islamic Jihad of the Jewish greenhouses in Gaza that were left there to facilitate the economy to build rockets. And you have the problem of the Palestinian Authority's entire economic apparatus being corrupt and supporting terror and paying families of terrorists. Is there anything that Israel or Jewish businesses here in America can do to bypass the Palestinian Authority and help on some level with the Palestinian economy, and do you think it would do any good?
Look, Aaron, I must say that helping the Palestinian economy is a positive thing. I think that what can be achieved now is improving even dramatically the standard of life of Palestinians by establishing maybe joint industrial zones, Jewish-Palestinian industrial zones, and that will be a positive thing. But, you know, I will be sincere. If you ask me directly about Jewish businesses in America, Jewish businesses in this country, in the world, what can they do? I will say, first and foremost, invest in Israel. And with all due respect to the Palestinian economy, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to invest in the Palestinian economy, to the contrary. But I think the first and foremost, invest in Israel. Israel is today an economy that gives excellent rates of return. It's not about philanthropy, it's about earning money, about boosting the economy. I must say that I am very glad to see that today, this very day, this Thursday, the great oracle from Omaha, Warren Buffett, is in New York to recommend and advance purchasing of Israeli bonds by the business community in New York. He did already a few months ago a similar event in Omaha, in Nebraska, and now he came especially to New York to do it. He himself, in his portfolio, has a huge amount of Israeli bonds. But he came as a kind of, as an oracle to say Israeli bonds are an excellent investment. Believe me, Aaron, he doesn't do it because of Zionism or ideological reasons. He has a brand to keep sure that is intact, his brand as the greatest investor in the world, and if he recommends investing in Israel via bonds or other ways, you know that his investments in Israel, Iskar and other companies, he says always that he has never seen something like that. An economy and companies and a workforce and a management capabilities of that magnitude. I think that we have to understand that we are way long after those days in which what we needed is philanthropy. We are very grateful to philanthropy because there are many worthy causes that we need. But Israel today is a free market society, open to business, and we want also Jewish business and not only Jewish aid to Israel.
Dani, Dayan, Israel's counsel here in New York, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.